Hello everybody. We have been learning about Greek myths lately. Our last myth that we read was Arachne the Weaver. In Arachne the Weaver, we learned that Arachne was a weaver, or someone who weaves thread and yarn together to make cloth or tapestries. She was mortal, and she challenged the goddess Athena to a weaving contest. Remember, she was bragging about how she was the best weaver in the world, and Athena came to her, and she stood by what she said and challenged Athena to a contest. She lost the contest, and Athena turned her into a spider. That's how the Greeks explain how spiders first came into the world. Now remember, myths often are used to explain certain things in nature or how certain things happened. Myths are fictional stories, which means that they're not true. But in the time that they were written down in ancient Greece, people did believe that they were true stories. Greek myths also feature supernatural characters or mythical characters. These mythical or supernatural characters have special powers. Often, the supernatural or mythical characters in Greek myths are gods or goddesses, like Demeter, Persephone, and Hades in Demeter and Persephone. But not always. Sometimes mythological characters are not gods or goddesses, like Cerberus, Hades' three-headed dog. In today's myth, there are no gods or goddesses. There is a mythical character, and there is a hero who is very courageous. Our hero of our story today is named Theseus. We'll take some notes about him when we're done reading. As we're reading, pay attention to who the hero is and what courageous or heroic things he's doing, and who the mythical creature is. Who is the character in this story that has some kind of supernatural powers? Before we read today, I'm going to go over our vocabulary words, my friends. Labyrinth. Labyrinth means maze. The competitors raced to be the first to reach the prize at the center of the labyrinth, but they were easily confused by the tall bushes all around them. Convinced. Convinced means persuaded or brought someone to a certain opinion. As we talked, my mom convinced me that it was better to do my homework before going outside to play. Sneered. Sneered means made a face that showed dislike. The thief sneered rudely when the police questioned him. Vaulted. Vaulted means jumped over something tall and large. Brooke vaulted over the fence as she chased her runaway puppy. Unraveling. Unraveling means unwinding or coming apart. The threads in the old warm blanket began unraveling after it was washed many, many times. See if you can think of something that you had, an item that you had, that was unraveling. Now see if you can think of an antonym for the word unraveling. Remember, an antonym is a word that means the opposite. Theseus was the son of the ruler of Athens, King Aegeus. Remember, we learned that Athens used democracy. But our story takes place before democracy was born, when Athens was still ruled by a king. Theseus had been raised by his mother in a town far away from Athens, and did not know his father in his youth. When he was old enough, in order to meet his father, Theseus journeyed to Athens, had many adventures, and proved himself a fierce warrior. When he finally reached Athens, he was shocked to hear what his father, King Aegeus, was telling him. Next week, King Minos and his ship returned to Athens after another 9 years, King Aegeus said.
This will be the most terrible time for our people when they see those black sails." "Black sails? Who is this King Minos, and what happens when his ship comes to Athens?" asked Prince Theseus. His father answered, "King Minos, who rules the great island of Crete, has the mightiest navy and army on earth. Several years ago, his son was visiting here in Athens. There was a terrible accident, and the young man never returned to Crete. I sent word to Crete explaining what had happened and how sorry we were, but King Minos would not listen. He and his warriors attacked and conquered Athens. Then Minos announced, 'You Athenians must share my sorrow. My son was 18 when he went to Athens. Every 9 years, I shall send to you a ship with black sails. This ship will take 7 of your Athenian men and 7 Athenian women, each my son's age, to Crete. There I shall send those Athenians into the labyrinth.'" "What is the labyrinth, father?" Theseus asked. "It is an enormous maze of twisting tunnels and rooms cut into the hillside near Minos's palace. Minos commissioned the master inventor, Daedalus, to design it. Commissioned means choose someone to do a specific job. Once inside, a person becomes hopelessly lost. Worse yet, living in that maze is the Minotaur, a monster that is half bull and half man." Does that sound like a supernatural or mythical creature to you? I think so. The Minotaur knows every inch of the maze and hunts down whomever enters there. Many times King Minos has sent his black-sailed ship to carry away 7 of our young men and women, and none of them ever gets out of the labyrinth. And now, next week, the black-sailed ship will return. Theseus said, "Father, you know my skills as a warrior. I am 18 years old. I will take the place of one of these youths and stop the Minotaur before it can strike again." "No, my son, I will not let you risk your life," King Aegeus replied. "Father, how can I let this continue when I know that I can stop it? I am the person with the best chance against the beast." Finally, Theseus convinced his father and told him that if he was successful, he and the other Athenians would return on King Minos' ship with white sails. A week later, the prince and the other young Athenians boarded King Minos' ship. When they reached the island of Crete, guards led them to King Minos' throne room in the palace. There, Minos sneered, "It is fitting that the son of the king of Athens should not return to his home, as my son did not return to his." Theseus answered, "It is more fitting that the son of the king of Athens should end this horrid business once and for all." Make a prediction. Do you think that Theseus will be successful? Standing at King Minos' side through all of this was his daughter, Princess Ariadne. The princess was amazed to see that Theseus was not afraid. She thought, "What an extraordinary man! I must save him. But how? Even I would not be safe from my father's fury if he found out." Princess Ariadne needed help, so she went to see the most brilliant man she knew, the man who also happened to be the creator of the labyrinth, Daedalus. The clever Daedalus told her, "It is impossible to sneak a weapon into the maze. The guards would find it and remove it, and eventually they would trace it back to you. However, if the reports of Theseus's bravery are true, he may still have a chance fighting the Minotaur. Then at least we can help him find his way back out of the labyrinth. Here is what you must do." What is Daedalus holding in his hand in this picture? Make another prediction. What do you think that is going to be used for in Daedalus's plan? That night, Princess Ariadne went to Theseus's room in her father's palace. She told the young hero, "Wind this ball of string around yourself beneath your clothes so the guards will not see it. After you enter the labyrinth, tie one end of the thread to the handle of the gate and unwind the rest as you go through the maze. If you defeat the Minotaur, rewind the thread and it will lead you back by the same route to the gate. And if you succeed, you must take me with you to Athens, for if my father finds out that I have helped you..." "Of course we will take you," Theseus said. "Thank you, Princess." What do you think is going to happen next? What is Theseus going to have to do you think? The next day, after the guards closed the gate of the labyrinth behind the Athenians, Theseus told the others, "Wait here. I go to seek the Minotaur. If I fail, you are no worse off. If I succeed, we will all be able to return safely to Athens." Tying the thread to the door handle, unraveling it with each step, Theseus set off into the labyrinth. Within 5 minutes, he was hopelessly lost. Still he went on, though he knew that the half-man, half-bull might be waiting around the next bend for him, or sneaking up from behind, ready to eat him. Finally, Theseus found himself at the entrance to the great central room of the labyrinth. Resting on the stone floor at the far end was the Minotaur. It had the huge, muscled body of a man, but instead of a man's head, there was the head of a bull with long, sharp horns. Theseus broke off the golden thread and stepped forward. The Minotaur rose to its feet to face him. Then the Minotaur charged. Theseus waited as the huge beast rushed towards him. At the last moment, the young prince stepped to one side and vaulted over the monster's back. Confused at not having caught him on its horns, the Minotaur turned back and charged again. Again Theseus avoided its horns, leaping to the other side this time. Over and over, Theseus escaped the deadly horns. Each time, Theseus was moving closer to the wall of the room. Finally, as Theseus leapt aside once more, the Minotaur, unable to stop, ran with an explosive shock into the wall. Staggering, it fell to its knees. Theseus leapt upon its back and seized the great horns. He wrestled the Minotaur to the ground and eventually defeated him. If Theseus defeated the Minotaur, does that mean that he won? Yeah, he did. Hours later, the other Athenians saw their prince emerging wearily and triumphantly from the stone tunnels. Untying the thread that had led him back, he said quietly, "Let's go home." Opening the gate, which was never locked, for no one had ever returned, the Athenians stole out, or snuck out quietly. The day had passed, and the city was now shadowed with night. They moved down to the harbor and found Princess Ariadne waiting for them in the shadows by the docks. Then they all set sail for Athens, bearing the glad news. Thanks to Theseus, the danger from the Minotaur was finally over. Theseus, however, had forgotten to change the sails from black to white. Why was Theseus supposed to change the sails? What do you think that King Aegeus is going to think? When his father, King Aegeus, saw the black sails from his perch on a cliff, he fainted and fell forward into the sea. To this day, the sea King Aegeus fell into is called the Aegean Sea.
All right, my friends, as always, I've got some questions about what we just read. My first question is about myths. We talked about how myths often explain how something came to be. What do you think this myth explains? This one's a little bit trickier. This myth explains how the Aegean Sea got its name. How did the Aegean Sea get its name? Why did they name it that? What did we learn in the story? Right. The king thought that Theseus had died and was so shocked that he fell off of the cliff and died. And so they named the sea that he died in the Aegean Sea. Alright, my friends. Why does King Minos send 14 Athenian youths into the labyrinth every 9 years? Why did he do that? Right, he was sad about his son dying, and he blamed Athens or the Athenians. Why do you think Princess Ariadne helps Theseus, even though she knows that her father would be furious? Why did she help him? Right, she was impressed with Theseus and thought that he was an extraordinary man. How was Theseus able to defeat the Minotaur and escape from the labyrinth? Remember, Ariadne helped him come up with a plan to escape. What was their plan? And how did he beat the Minotaur? Right. Ariadne helped Theseus wrap a string all around his waist, and as he traveled through the labyrinth, the string unraveled and created a path for him to follow. He defeated the Minotaur by leaping over its horns every time it charged at him. Why is Daedalus important in this story? Who is Daedalus? Why was he important? Right, Daedalus is the one that created the labyrinth. Remember, he was a very smart inventor, and he created the labyrinth, and he gave Princess Ariadne the idea of how to help Theseus escape. I want you now to turn to the person sitting next to you, and I want you to ask them a question about the story that we just read. I want your question to start with either the word who or why. See if you can think of a question about our story that starts either with who or why, and ask whoever is helping you today. If they can't answer it, then you get to be the teacher for a little while, and you get to explain to them. Go ahead and pause until you are done asking your question and teaching if you need to, and then resume again when you are ready for our next thing. All right, my friends, I have made a chart with all of the myths that we have read so far and a couple of the characteristics of those myths. So in Prometheus and Pandora, there were no mythical creatures. The Greek gods and goddesses in this story were Zeus, Prometheus, and Epimetheus. And the lesson that was taught, or the thing it tried to explain, was how humans and animals were created, how humans got fire, and how all of the sorrows and evils came into the world. In Demeter and Persephone, our only mythical creature was Cerberus, Hades' three-headed dog. The Greek gods and goddesses that we saw in that read aloud were Demeter, Persephone, Hades, Zeus, and Helios. Remember, Helios was the sun god, or the god that causes the sun to rise every morning. This story tried to explain how the seasons change and the life cycle of plants, why plants die and grow again. In our last one, Arachne the Weaver, there were no mythical creatures. The only Greek goddess in our story, god or goddess in our story, was the goddess Athena. And it explained how spiders came to be. And there was also a moral or a lesson to that one, and it was to not be boastful or prideful and do not brag. In Theseus and the Minotaur, were there any mythical creatures? Right. The Minotaur was a mythical creature. He was half man and half bull. Were there any Greek gods and goddesses in our story today? No, this was our first Greek myth without any Greek gods or goddesses. What did today's myth explain? Remember, this one explained how something got its name. What was it? You've got it. This one explained how the Aegean Sea got its name. There we go. All right, my friends, there is one more thing we're going to do for our lesson today. I'm going to have you pull up the PDF that's attached to this assignment and open it with Cami. I'm going to jump over to my computer so I can show you what to do. All right, we have 2 parts to our assignment today. When you get that PDF open in Cami, it should look like this. For the first part of our assignment today, we are going to practice sequencing the events of a story. Remember, sequencing means that we are putting things in the correct order that they happened. On this first page, we have 4 different sets of 2 sentences. These sentences explain or describe things that happened in our story today. We are going to add first and then to show which of these sentences happened first and which one happened next. Let's look at number 1 together. For this one, you can use drawing or text box. It's harder for me to use the drawing tool to make letters, so I'm going to use my text box. Our 2 sentences on number 1 say, Theseus defeats the Minotaur, and Theseus volunteers to enter the labyrinth. Which of those 2 things happened first? I'm pretty sure that Theseus entered the labyrinth before he defeated the Minotaur. I'm going to write first on that one. If this happens first, then we know that this happens next, or then. So I can put then on this line. For the next 3 sets of sentences, I will read them aloud for you, but it is your job to write first and then in the correct places. If you need to pause after I read what the 2 sentences say, go ahead and pause until you are ready for the next question. If you need to rewind and listen to what I said again, that is fine too. You can always go back and listen again. Number 2 says, Theseus forgets to change the sails from black to white. And King Aegeus falls into the sea. Which of those 2 things happened first, and which one happened then or next? All right, if you are not ready for 3, go ahead and pause. If you are, 3 says, Theseus ties the gold thread around his body, and King Minos's son dies in Athens. Go ahead and pause
until you are ready for 4. 4 says, Daedalus creates the labyrinth, and Princess Ariadne asks Daedalus how to help Theseus escape from the labyrinth. When you are finished with that first part of our assignment today, go ahead and scroll down to the next page. We have been working on journal entries for all of the Greek mythological characters that we have been reading about. We're going to do a journal entry for the characters we read about today. Today, you may choose to focus on Theseus or on the Minotaur. You choose which one you want to write about more or focus on more. As you're writing about these characters, remember I need 2 or 3 sentences about them. Those sentences should give me information like, are they immortal or mortal? Are they a supernatural character? Both of our characters were mortal, but was one of them supernatural? The Minotaur was supernatural because he was half man and half bull. You are also going to want to tell me, what did they do in their story? What did they do in this story? What important role did they play, and what did they do? When you are finished writing your 2 to 3 sentences, you can use the drawing and shapes to illustrate your writing or draw a picture of your character. The picture is not a requirement though, that's just if you would like to. When you are done with your journal entry, go ahead and turn this one in, and you are all finished with knowledge today.